A winter morning, 3,000 meters above sea level. The wind whips across the edges of a glacier. It's usually covered in 7 meters of snow. This year, it's only 2. Is this winter a sign of a different world to come? A world with both winners and losers? A world on its way to Alpine Meltdown. The Blig Glacier in Tyrol's Kauner Valley. A shepherd reported a rockfall on a popular hiking trail. Geologists Gunther Heissel and Petri Nittel dropped in to take a look. Every few seconds, rocks and boulders were snapping off the edge of the glacier and crashing down into the valley. Even Earth scientists don't see this every day.
Look, there's another piece coming away. Did you get it?
The collapse of a glacier.
Look, there's more. Incredible.
A tsunami of rock and ice.
Look out! Run! Run!
The mountain is now under constant observation. Lake Schwarzsee, 2,800 meters above sea level, just a few valleys further on. Günther Kirk and his team are at work here. Günther is tracing poisons he discovered completely unexpectedly. He came to this pristine, remote mountain lake to catch healthy, uncontaminated fish. He only needed them as a control in water quality tests.
Then we got a nasty surprise. The Arctic char in Lake Schwarzsee contained concentrations of heavy metals usually only found in fish in industrial areas.
The fish are now examined regularly. The results are astonishing. The concentration of heavy metals is increasing year on year. The lake bed also contains some surprises. The history of the lake from its creation to today is recorded in the mud. Major events are revealed, layer by layer. The recent volcanic eruption in Iceland is as visible as the introduction of unleaded petrol or the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl. Everything we send up into the atmosphere inevitably comes back and leaves traces in both the lake bed and the fish. The researchers are especially interested in the mercury that was absorbed into alpine ice and is now seeping out of the ground as it thaws. Because of global warming, bacteria are transforming this extremely poisonous heavy metal into methyl mercury, 100 times more toxic. And methyl mercury may not just contaminate the fish. Sooner or later, it could find its way into drinking water. It hasn't happened yet, but temperatures continue to rise. The world is changing. The glaciers are silent witnesses. They are the Earth's thermometer, a landscape of ice, snow, crevices, and bizarre fissures. The Alpine glaciers are familiar to us. They're part of our understanding of the world. However, the ice cover in this region is an exception. Since the creation of the Earth, the periods of warmth have been more numerous and far longer than relatively cold periods like today's. In the geological context of the Earth, we're living at the end of an ice age. Temperatures are rising. The glaciers are retreating, melting at an ever higher rate. We can only guess how long they will remain and what they will leave behind. All over the world, scientists are seeking answers to these questions. Austria's longest glacier, the Pasterze, is the research base for Wolfgang Schöner and his team.
Our measurements clearly demonstrate that hotter summers make far more difference than warmer winters. In a very hot summer, the glacier loses a lot of ice, and that doesn't do it any good. The ice front we're standing on will have vanished in 3 to 4 years. In 30 or 40 years, we'll have to walk several kilometers to get to the ice front.
The Pasterze has been surveyed regularly for over 130 years. We can follow its story in great detail and predict how Austria's largest glacier will develop in the future. In 1850, when the glaciers were last at their peak, the Pasterze covered 27 square kilometers. The ice was 400 meters thick. Today, it's just 150 meters thick. The ice front, which once stretched over 11 kilometers, may have vanished entirely by 2050. A new landscape is emerging. Glacial streams are constantly carving out new formations of debris, fine mud, and miniature lakes. Eventually, flowers will bloom here. They'll bloom again, as they did 900 years ago when the climate was warmer than today. An increase of just 5 degrees Celsius could mean the return of something humans once witnessed here. Pasture land. Pasterze is Slovenian for pasture. On warm days, water runoff from the glacier flows into the valley. Many of Austria's most impressive waterfalls are fed by glaciers. In warm periods, the daily water needs of 2,000 people thunder over the Kremler Falls in Salzburg every second. In summer, glacial streams compensate for reduced rainfall, feeding the rivers, replenishing the groundwater. But this source is not infinite. If global warming continues, the streams will dry up. Like the glaciers, animals also bear witness to the changing climate. Just 10 years ago, the praying mantis could only be found in a few warm areas in the south and east of Austria. Today, this bright green lowland hunter searches for prey in the Alps, more than 1,000 meters above sea level. The higher the temperature, the bigger the habitat of the warmth-loving mantis. It settles in ever higher regions. The same is true of its prey and innumerable other insect species. A mass migration in the insect world. The praying mantis is one of the beneficiaries of global warming, but animals that currently populate the mountain peaks are trapped. For them, the news gets worse and worse.
It's going to be a hot day. Morning mists and clouds will clear rapidly, and temperatures in the south and east will climb to 35 degrees Celsius.
Shortly after sunrise, the marmots appear in the pastures. As always, the day begins with games, territorial disputes, and the quest for food. Everything seems normal, just another marmot day. But an hour later, the playful atmosphere begins to change. The marmots begin to eat frantically. These furry rodents escaped into the mountains 10,000 years ago, when the last total glaciation of the Alps came to an end, and the temperatures in the valleys grew too hot for them. Now, the heat is catching up with them again. Today, the sun has barely cleared the mountain peaks, and already temperatures are rising fast, with no trees to provide shade. The marmots become lethargic. They begin digging cool burrows in the earth. On hot days, many marmots retreat into their burrows early in the morning. That may protect them from the sun, but this behavior doesn't suit their natural rhythm. And so the tension remains. This is not just another normal marmot day. Experts do not expect marmots to survive a temperature rise of 5 degrees. These little creatures should now be eating to build up fat reserves for their winter hibernation, when they will lose a third of their body weight. These hot days rapidly reduce fat reserves. This significantly cuts their chances of survival and their chances of procreation. Marmots mate immediately after hibernation. If the adults are undernourished, they're only able to raise one infant. Normally, there would be up to 6 young. Young marmots spend 40 days in the den, practicing the skills they need to survive in the colony. Individual marmots forced to grow up alone remain backward. Frequently, they only achieve physical maturity at 4 years of age. Animals with siblings may start a new family at the age of 2. And marmots are not the only animals that could suffer reduced populations. It's November, mating season for the chamois. The males mark their territory with urine. Increasingly, temperatures remain warm far into the autumn. The chamois are covered in their winter fur, as mating used to take place in the snow. Today, the only snow to be found is a small patch in the shadow of some rocks. The chamois now engage in wild chases typical of the mating season, in their winter coats, in temperatures of 20 degrees. This takes far more energy. The males could enter the winter significantly weakened, and they may not survive the lean season. And their mates may simply lose interest in them because of the heat. "2,000 meters below, hoverflies. They've been feeding since first light. They're preparing for a long journey they've never taken before. Like bees, hoverflies play an important role in pollinating flowers. Europe is home to almost 500 subspecies of this insect. As soon as temperatures in the valley reach 30 degrees, billions of them take off across the Alpine passes, heading south. Biologist Johannes Gepp has been following the new migration for several years. He catches the flies in netting tents along the migration routes to estimate how many are making the journey. Every year, the numbers increase.
In 1980, we witnessed this migration on 3 days each year. Because of climate change, there are now more than 10 days a year when large numbers of hoverflies leave the regions north of the Alps and migrate towards southern Europe. Right now, we can't guess what the long-term effects on ecosystems will be if millions of individuals are missing from some areas or turn up in others.
Mature hoverflies may not be the only ones to be missed. The absence of hoverfly larvae may also have consequences. A common hoverfly species lays its eggs in water. The resulting larvae are known as rat-tailed maggots. These 2-centimeter-long insects are crucial for the purity of water in pools and lakes. They swallow water and filter out bacteria and detritus, which they digest. A single creature can clean 1 square meter of lake. A tireless, natural cleaning service. No one knows what will happen if billions of these little cleaners vanish. And the warm period has yet to reach its peak.
The high-pressure front over Austria is here for the rest of the week. In low-lying areas, temperatures will rise to 40 degrees.
Pools and ponds are now threatened, as is Austria's largest lake, Lake Neusiedl. It's only about 2 meters deep, surrounded by one of Europe's biggest reed beds. With its unique flora and fauna, this shallow steppe lake is a natural jewel, a habitat for 300 species of birds. Many breed here. Others migrate here or use the lake as a resting place. all the coming and going, differences of opinion are par for the course. By 2040, there will probably be 3 times as many days with temperatures above 30 degrees. "70% of the migratory birds may stop coming here. As the pools and ponds dry up, the small creatures that provide nourishment for many birds will vanish. As the water retreats, territorial disputes begin. The idea is to outcroak your rival before pushing him under. It makes sense to deal with several rivals at once. But where the air is filled with croaks and splashes, there could soon be silence. For frog and toad larvae, survival has become a race against time. They have to be fully mature and able to breathe air before the pool dries up. Although tadpoles develop faster in the warmer water, they are also more prone to diseases. A fatal fungal infection is spreading across the planet. It destroys the sensitive skin of amphibians. As temperatures rise by 5 degrees, their struggle for survival will be the toughest of all living creatures.
Attention, this is a weather warning. The heat wave shows no sign of ending, and people with circulation problems are advised to remain indoors.
Lake Neusiedl evaporates. A body of water covering almost 300 square kilometers transforms into dry land and swamp. It's a death sentence for the lake's inhabitants. And yet a huge new habitat is created, an ideal habitat for the golden jackal. For years, this small relative of the wolf has roamed across eastern Austria. It hasn't yet settled here, but nature never leaves an empty space. When one species vanishes, another takes its place without delay. This is the force that drives life, and the reason it has survived every global disaster. A large open area of reeds, swamp and sand islands would immediately attract golden jackals. Instead of rare sightings, we would hear their calls, a sign that they have formed packs. Golden jackals could be among the few European mammals to benefit from climate change. The emergence of new habitats always comes at a cost. A temperature increase of 5 degrees will intensify the battle for survival of many species. As long as the film of water covering the tadpoles doesn't break, they can survive until the next shower. A change in climate means a restructuring of all ecosystems. No region and no species will remain untouched. Life battles for as long as it can, but eventually the systems begin to collapse. Then events move rapidly.
The situation in the Horn of Africa is desperate. Drought has inflicted an unprecedented human disaster.
Almost 70% of livestock in the region dead. As one drought year follows another, savanna turns into desert. More than 15 million people forced to leave their homes. Climate change has always resulted in mass migration. If temperatures continue to rise, the heat will be only one of many problems.
Floods in Pakistan, a fifth of the country is underwater. Millions of people have lost their homes.
By 2050, more than 400 million people may be homeless as a result of natural disasters. Refugees will crowd into safe countries with stable climates. Experts warn of the dangers of war and economic chaos. Climate change is a challenge for politicians and for human common sense. In the future, changes will occur more rapidly, and the consequences will be more extreme for humans and for nature.
A storm front is approaching Austria. Hurricane-force winds and heavy rain are expected across the country. The low-pressure front has reached Austria. Severe storms are expected starting in the early afternoon.
Ab Mittag drohen landesweit heftige Gewitter.
Higher temperatures make more water evaporate in a shorter time. The risk of storms and floods increases. City centers, once safe, will increasingly be underwater. Existing flood protection is already inadequate as rivers and streams rise. Destruction is increasing. Floodplains have become especially dangerous. Far above the valleys, heavy rainfall poses risks for other forms of life. Chamois young are born in early summer and must survive in a tough mountain habitat. Kids are protected from the cold by their thick fur, but the fur offers little protection against rain and fog. The damp weakens the young animals, reduces their natural defenses, and makes them more susceptible to diseases. A wet early summer can decimate an entire generation of chamois. We can't be certain that global warming will mean heavier rainfall in the Alps. The necessary long-term research hasn't yet been done. But other phenomena are all too clear. The spruce forests of Central Europe are thinning out. Initially, this was caused by heavy storms. Now, more and more of the remaining trees are dying. The cause is a beetle, just 5 millimeters long. The European spruce bark beetle. It lays its eggs beneath the tree bark. The larvae's feeding tunnels interrupt the natural sap flow, depriving the tree of its basic nourishment. The warmer the weather, the faster the young beetles develop. At 30 degrees, an entire generation matures in just 1 month. The result is a population explosion. Up to 4 generations of bark beetles could swarm out in the course of a single summer. One female could have more than 120,000 offspring. This tiny creature will change the world. Affected trees must be cut down. Forestry services can barely keep up with the task. Increasingly, trees remain standing. If temperatures increase by 5 degrees, spruce trees will vanish from the forests. Bark beetles will deforest entire swathes of land, leaving behind a graveyard of tree stumps like these in the Bavarian Forest National Park. Yet even here, nature reconquers these spaces. Animals that had almost disappeared are given a fresh chance in the clearings that are left behind. The horned viper loves warm, sunny clearings. It uses its powerful sense of smell to follow the trails of mice. Mice tend to keep to the same paths. The viper finds a hiding place nearby. It waits until its prey comes close enough. The snake leaves the scene until the poison has done its job. Only then does it return to claim its prey. A few years ago, the horned viper was very rare. Now, its habitat is expanding. This snake will be one of the beneficiaries of global warming, as will many other animals now thought of as rare. An inconspicuous cylinder in the grass. Insects crawl across it. But a deadly weapon is concealed in this camouflaged web. It belongs to the purse web spider. Hidden within the tube, it waits for suitable prey that it recognizes and locates by its movements. The purse web spider, a relative of the tarantula, is found in very few places in Austria. But it could spread, along with many other spider species, if it gets warmer. And it's not just native species that will enjoy new opportunities. Cargoes, to and from every corner of the world, give animal immigrants a new world of opportunity. Many pests are introduced, along with imported foodstuffs, coffee and spices. 2.7 million organisms every day, they reckon. Most of them die because the new climate is unsuitable. But if temperatures rise, many will discover new countries to populate. No one knows what could arrive here. Every package, every foodstuff, every crease in clothing could contain bacteria, eggs, larvae, or animals. Native species frequently have no defense against these foreign imports. The speed with which these aliens spread in the right climatic conditions is demonstrated by one particularly successful invasion: the migration of the Spanish slug into Central Europe. They were probably imported from France. Since then, they have fed here. And fed. And fed, breaking records wherever they go. Up to 1,000 have been recorded in a single square meter. In several countries, this has become the most common slug species. Tons of poison are spread to combat these pests every year, yet they remain and keep eating. Many things that are currently unimaginable will soon be taken for granted. Southern Styria, known as Styrian Tuscany. The white and rosé wines produced here are internationally known. But for how long? Already the wine growers harvest 3 weeks earlier than they did 30 years ago. A few degrees more, and these ancient presses could be producing heavy red wines as they did in Roman times, when temperatures were warmer than they are now. Changes are happening, but nature is complicated. There's not just an ongoing increase in temperature.
Following the sleet of the last few days, temperatures are expected to drop further. Automobile associations warn that overnight frost will turn snow and slush on the roads into black ice.
In future, there's likely to be more precipitation in winter. It will mainly take the form of rain, but there will also be freezing, icy periods. Higher temperatures in the Arctic could drive freezing polar air masses towards Europe. The Earth's climate involves very complex relationships over great distances. Different aspects can be evaluated and predictions can be made, but we are far from a full understanding of nature. Even in a period of global warming, winter could look like this. And no matter how cold the winter may be, the summers will certainly be warmer. In 50 years, 3/4 of our glaciers will have vanished. It's not just the ice which will disappear. A part of our alpine world will be lost forever. A mysterious, ancient, icy world. Bernhard Berger, a Tyrolean photographer, documents the world inside the glacier in the permanent ice.
I'm really interested in the colors. You won't find them anywhere else. The sky is blue, but the range of shades produced by a glacier is not found anywhere else. I go inside a glacier and I discover a pristine landscape, a wild, ice-covered world that has probably never been seen by anyone else. This is virgin territory, untouched by humans. I find it incredibly fascinating. To me, this is a historical document. Things change so fast, the openings into the glaciers come and go.
This was his final photo here. Just 2 weeks later, the glacier cave had turned into a perilous pile of collapsing blocks of ice. Vanishing glaciers can be dangerous because the melting process is uneven, with sudden surges. Glaciers have been known to lose 100 meters in one summer. The Trift Glacier in Switzerland's Hasli Valley shows how quickly they can disappear. In the year 2000, you could still comfortably walk from one side of the valley to the other, on the ice. A popular trek led to the Trift Chalet. By 2003, this path could only be used by experienced climbers. The glacier was disappearing fast. The first small pools of meltwater had appeared at the end of the 1990s. The glacier then collapsed. In just 10 years, it lost 1 kilometer in length, and the largest glacial lake in the Alps came into being. Today, the valley can only be crossed on the longest, highest suspended bridge in Europe. Although the bridge is safe in a storm, not everybody feels comfortable. The edges of the Trift Glacier are under constant observation as the rapid melt has destabilized the remaining ice. Glaciologists warn that the ice may collapse into the lake, causing a massive tidal wave. But it's not just the ice on the mountains that could pose a risk. The ice in the mountains may also become dangerous. Just a few years ago, the summit of the Sonnenblick mountain was in danger of splitting. 600 tons of steel and concrete were used to screw it together. Now the mountain is regularly checked. The permafrost, the ice that usually remains frozen solid all year and holds sections of rock together like glue, is thawing. Regular measurements show how the permafrost is holding up. Subterranean temperature changes are recorded to make predictions for other mountains. Thawing permafrost means a higher risk of rockfalls. Many mountainsides are now covered in several meters of loose rock. You only have to look. Massive changes are already visible. Particularly if, like Sepp Forcher, you can remember how it was many years ago.
I came here for the first time in 1950 because I wanted to climb the Glockner. The weather was terrible and there was ice everywhere you looked. Now, the idea that there was 30 or 40 meters of ice above me is unthinkable. In 1952, I returned as a carrier for the Oberwald Chalet. Back then, you have to carry 60 kilos on your back for 2 to 3 hours up the mountain, and I got 1 shilling 20 per kilo. I crossed the glacier every day. You can't imagine that today. Now, you come here and see how nature is taking everything back. Today, there's a beautiful landscape where once there was permanent ice.
The landscape will continue to change. Perhaps in 90 years' time, the glaciers at 3,000 meters will have vanished, and mountain lakes will glisten among the peaks. Since its creation, the Earth has constantly changed. It continues to do so. For millions of years, nature has adapted to the changes. It continues to do so. There have always been winners and losers. Some species have vanished as new species appeared. The world never stands still. Once again, it is about to change. And once again, there will be winners and losers.